Hello, everyone. My name is Britton Hainsworth. I'm a member of the Mozenda Services Department here in Mozenda, where we manage projects for people and their data needs. Um, and I just wanted to show you today a quick little use case for sequences that I think will be useful for you. What I'm going to show you today we refer to as batching. And generally, we use batching when you want to deal with very large data sets. When you're getting up into the millions of data lines of data in the Mozenda Web Console, it can really bog things down and be really hard to deal with that much data all in one file. And so what I'll show you today helps you to actually batch out. So let's jump into it. So just to give you a little background of this particular project, basically what we'll be doing is coming to archive.org, or Open Library is the name of the domain, and we want to come into all of these different subjects that they have available for their books. This, architecture has over 40,000 results. We come into some of these other ones. That one's a little smaller. A few of these are quite large, and I've done some of the beginning work just to speed things up for this video today. And so that's what these agents are. So this agent here scrapes all of the URLs for these different subjects. So it'll gather the name of the subject and the URL to click into those. And then I have a second agent here that goes in to each of those and figures out how many pages we want to get to for the page list. So for example, let's say we came into here. We have a lot of results here. We come down here and we want to click into each of these, and you can see when we come to page 6 that I just clicked on, it's going to add that parameter to the URL. So that's what the second agent does, is it actually creates all of these different URLs for all of the results for each. So let's come back here. So that's this one. And just to give you an idea, I did limit the page list a little bit just so we didn't have too many results. But what we've ended up with so far is just over 2 million results. And keep in mind that these results so far are just the page URLs, and there's 20 books per page. So if you do the math on that, that's a pretty high amount of actual books that we'll scrape. Let's get into it here. So after that point, we have our agent that generally just loads those page URLs and gets the list of books. That's what this last agent does. So as far as the batching process, that's kind of like the setup. Pretty general. That's how we set up pretty much all of our projects that we ever scrape. So now if we come to the sequences that I have set up, this one is just the first two agents to get to the point where we need to start batching, where the files are getting big enough where we want to batch. And then we have two different batching sequences. And let me show you what those look like. So we come into this first batching agent, or batching sequence, and we have a few different run or sequence steps here that do some different things. And some of these you may have seen in here, but you're not sure exactly what they do. Basically, we're going to use this sequence step here, update field value, to create batches. And this is what that looks like. So we'll come in, when you come into this, you're going to tell it to look at a certain view in your input collection, which is our O2 agent. And then we're going to add to a field called batch the value current. So we're telling this collection to mark a certain number of fields with the value current. And then you would want to do some math here and generally figure out how big you want those batches to be. So if we have 20, if we're going to have 20 results per URL in this collection that we're updating, then basically you would do some math and say, if I want my final output files, each of them to be maybe 100,000, or maybe you're okay with them being 500,000, something like that, you would want to do the math and figure out how many items basically you want to go through each run. And in this example, I'm going to keep it to really small batches just so it doesn't take forever to run, and I can kind of show you that process working. Here you'll notice that I'm marking this view that's called pending. So let me go back to this O2, this list page agent, and show you what views I have set up here. So in this input collection, we have 3 different views. One is just called pending. This will be the items that we're going to look at to mark. So this is everything that hasn't started running at all. So this is just the full batch before anything has gone through. And so we're excluding from view here any line item in that batch is not empty. And then we're going to have a current view. And so when our update field values comes through, it's going to mark this batch as current, and then it'll show up in this view because that's what we're looking for in this view criteria. And then when the sequence is complete, it's going to mark those line items in current as complete, and then they'll move into the complete view. So sequence step 1, we come through, mark the view pending and the field batch as current, and we do that for 20 line items. So that'll be our first batch. It'll move 20 items into the current view. And then our next run agent has a data list inside of it that's only looking at that current view. So it'll only find those current 20 items, publish those to wherever we'd like, so we can save those off. And then we have a secondary update field values step that's going to look at the current batch, the ones that were just completed, and mark the field batch as complete. And we just want it to mark all of them. It should only be 20, but just in case, we'll just mark everything in that view, and that'll move those items out of the current view. And basically we just rinse and repeat over and over again until those 2 million items are all complete. So to do that, we actually create a secondary batching sequence that does essentially the exact same thing. So if we come to batching 2, you can see everything is exactly the same, but this one will go back and run batching 1 again. So essentially, if we run either of these batching sequences, it'll just continue batching, running each other's sequences until it's complete. Then it'll error saying that there's no more items. And then we can go and cancel our sequence. So I'm going to pause my audio here. We'll speed this part up, and I'll just show you what it looks like while one of these sequences is running and how it'll run the next one, so you can kind of get an idea. Okay, so we now have our data ran, that batch ran. We've published it to our drive, and now it's updating those field values again and moving them to complete. So let's go and look. So like I showed you before, we have this current batch that it had moved. Now if we refresh here, it should have moved all of those out. Looks like it's still running here. I'll just give it a second. And they've moved here into the complete batch. So we pretty much just use this field as an indicator for our view to move those batches around. So now let's go back to our batching sequence here, and we can see that it's now running our second batching sequence. So we come here, this begins running, and this will again add that current value to the batching field so it can start on the next batch. Let's just check really quick so we can see if that's happening. Let's go to the current batch. And there you go. It's added the next 20 to the batch, and then it'll begin processing those. So that's really all the process is. It's just a series of two sequences that are, continuing to ping pong back and forth, and each one completes the next batch of however many we tell it to. And eventually we'll get through all of those many items and be able to deal with them in much smaller chunks. So yeah, that's batching. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our support line. They can help you with this process, and we hope this is something that can be useful for you in the future.